Hello, everyone. This is Gilbert Jalad. I'm talking to you here from CPLSPA, downtown Orlando. This is Tufts on Tax, where all your tax questions and answers right here with Mr. T. Scott Tufts. You can, if you have any lawsuits or any litigations regarding taxes or tax laws, or with the employers, with IRS, with employees, with family members, with friends, anyone, your answers are right here with Mr. T. Scott Tufts. He is the master and the expert when it comes to tax law. You can call him at 877-647-7887. Again, that number is 877-647-7887. You can see it on the bottom of the screen if you're watching our YouTube channel. You can also hit the subscribe button or the alert so you can get to know about the episodes and watch them every week. You can also email him at stufts@cplspa.com. That's going to be on the screen as well. Again, that's stufts@cplspa.com. Hello, Scott. How are you?
Good to be with you.
Good to be with you too today. And I have this question, which it's been asked, and people are wondering, what if you lose all the records of your tax returns, that, something happens and you lose everything, and you have no proof now if you get audited from the IRS? What do you do in this situation? Is there a solution to this?
Yes, so there's a number of things that you can do. So all is not lost. So number one, don't panic. Number two, you're going to want to get a copy of your tax return as filed. So assuming you don't have an electronic copy and you don't have an accountant who will have a copy of, and we're talking about the filed copy. So you kind of want to distinguish between the copy filed with the IRS and the taxpayer copy that your accountant gives you that has all of the worksheets and all the other extra stuff, and presumably your records, the supporting information that either you gave the accountant because of an organizer that they asked you for, or that you had in a box or in your records. All right.
Do they need your help in this situation, or there's a solution without?
Yeah, they can. Once they understand not to panic, they don't have to call me just yet. But one of the calls I get is, Scott, is there, and this is especially true for partners in a partnership, beneficiaries of a trust, personal representatives in a state after someone's died. They'll say, well, how do I get a copy of the tax return for someone else, if you follow what I'm saying? How do they get a copy of the partnership return if they're a partner? How do they get a copy of a trust return if they're the beneficiary? How do they get a copy of the prior returns filed by the estate if they're the personal representative, right? Or the trustees, this kind of situation.
Yeah.
So the IRS has a mechanism by which you can file a Form 4506. Okay?
4506.
Yep. And you pay some money. $74
Is it a lot of money
per return?
Well,
like $70-some per return.
Okay.
It might have gone up by
That's
now.
reasonable.
Or whatever the amount is, but it's per return, and you can send that off to the IRS, and they'll get those returns to you. Now, the other thing you can do is file with the IRS a 4506T, which is asking for the transcripts. Now, let's say you don't care so much about all the returns, or you want both. It's probably good to get the transcript as well. So that is a 4506T. Now, what that'll show you is that's kind of a ledger of not just record of your return getting filed, but other entries on your tax record, kind of like a ledger of events, if you will, that have occurred with regard to your particular year at issue, right? So that's a 4506T. Now, if it's a little bit more involved and there's been some kind of, matters that involve other agencies or other things, we oftentimes will recommend, or if it's complicated where there's, like we've been talking about partnerships and partners and all this stuff, you might want to also make a Freedom of Information Act request, FOIA You've heard of that, right? And you can do that as well and get a broader scope of records as well. So
Nice.
bottom line, rule 1, don't panic. Rule 2, go to the accountant if you had an accountant prepare it, or look for your electronic record. If that fails you and you've got to go to the IRS, then there is a form to seek a copy of your taxpayer, of the filed copy that went to the IRS. Now remember, you may have gotten more additional worksheets from the accountant. You're not going to get those from the government because you didn't presumably file those worksheets with the government. So those helpful supporting worksheets and stuff you may not get. Which then goes to the next question. If the IRS audits you and you don't have these records anymore,
Yeah, what do you do?
or you think you're out of luck?
What happens?
So let's say the thing I get a lot of questions about, and this is where I would come in, folks panic and say, well, I'm not going to be able to support any of the deductions I took on a tax form. Therefore, I'm going to get 0, and I'm going to get clobbered with taxes. And the good news is, the rule is not necessarily. And probably not if you get to someone like me. And why is because there are some things that, yes, there are certain expenses that require receipts, or prefer a contemporaneous log when you're keeping miles, for your mileage, for deducting mileage. But if in fact you've done something and in fact you took expenses that are reasonable, then in the field that you're in, let's say business, those expenses can be shown to be proportionally reasonable. You might be able to go to third parties and corroborate a few to where at some point you show enough corroboration of your expense that the IRS says, you know what, that's reasonable. You obviously, that number you didn't make up, you actually had it. It looks reasonable. It looks reasonable to your prior year return, proportionately to the income you're making or whatever it is. So you'll see year-to-year comparisons done. The bottom line is, if you're in a position to explain it, you're not necessarily out of luck. And that's the Cohen rule. It's a case, C-O-H-A-N, but it's an actual rule from a case that said, IRS, no, you don't get to say 0. I've used it this way. You ever play basketball or watch basketball on TV? Well, you know how they have the 3-point stripe? At times when you're interacting with the IRS, you get the feeling that if, let's say, before the buzzer goes off, you make the shot, but your foot might be on that 3-point line, right? How many points do you get if you're playing against the IRS? Well, some would say you get 0 because you can't prove you can't prove whether you're on the 3-point line or the 2-point line. So therefore you get 0 because you can't prove it. No, that's not how it works. You should be able to make a lot of headway, if not prove that you made a 3-point shot or a 2-point shot. You can ask the people in the crowd. They all saw it. At some point, you convince the IRS that, there's 25 people all saying he made it and his foot was behind the line of the 3-point line. You kind of build the evidence, and that's where somebody
So
like
they
me comes
do
in.
have some mercy there.
They do, absolutely. And I'll say this. Look, when you're talking to IRS folks, remember they're human beings. They got a job to do. And it's not even probably a very popular job in some respects. But they're serving our country, right?
True.
And if you can kind of back up and don't hold it against them that they work for the IRS, but instead realize they're a human being and get to know them a little bit. I mean, the context is awkward, and yeah, they may be aggressive at first or whatever. But remember, they've got a job to do. And if you can kind of get to know them and understand where they're coming from, you might be able to kind of take something that is very uncomfortable and make it more comfortable than it is at first, and then actually figure out what's going on and use your brain to approach it. But a lot of times that's my job, right? Because I'm trying to do the same thing. The only thing I'll say is that sometimes folks say, well, that's going to be expensive to hire somebody to help me with a matter when I'm dealing with taxes and it's already uncomfortable. And so it just gets to be an awful situation.
That's a good question.
And I think the again, let's kind of go back. One, don't panic. I think two, get at least a consult with someone like me. I mean, a lot of folks don't realize it, that you may not hire someone for the full bore defense. You might hire someone who says, hey, let me give you some rules of the road.
Guidance.
And then, you go jump in the fire then.
So you don't have to...
So, I'll give you some guidance. It's hot. It's burning. But if you want to jump, go ahead. And then they jump in anyway. Yes, I could probably try and throw a little cold water on it.
But that's very good. I mean, you don't have to go through this alone. There is at least the least you can do, at least get the advice and see where you're heading with this,
Absolutely.
right? So, guys, again, don't panic. Get the help you need, or at least the advice. Call Mr. T. Scott Tufts at 877-647-7887 or email him at stufts@cplspa.com. Again, that's stufts@cplspa.com, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.